Tonight, before sleep comes for you, in its own quiet way, let the room around you grow softer, and imagine that the present has become a lantern carried down a narrow road. The road is dark, but not frightening. It is only old. It is lined with wet hedges, low fields, and cottages crouched beneath their thatch like sleeping animals. Somewhere far ahead, a church bell has stopped ringing. Somewhere nearer, smoke moves from a roof hole and lies low beneath the cold night air. A dog gives one half-hearted bark, decides the world is not worth the effort, and curls back toward the heat of the hearth. This is not the England of bright banners and famous kings. Not tonight. Tonight, we are going to the smaller England, the one that rarely appears in grand paintings. A village after sunset, a monastery garden in dew, a market square thick with mud, a manor chamber behind heavy curtains, and a cottage where everyone is too tired to speak loudly. In this older world, sleep is not simple. It is not guaranteed by a dark room, a soft bed, and a quiet door. It must be coaxed from cold straw, smoke, worry, crying children, aching teeth, animals shifting in the dark, and the long memory of work that waits again at dawn. And on a shelf above the hearth, among the onions, wooden bowls, dried nettles, and little bundles of lavender, there may be a covered cup. No one needs to announce it. Everyone knows what it is meant to do. It belongs to the hazy borderland between medicine, comfort, habit, and danger. It is the sort of thing a grandmother might defend, a priest might warn against, a monk might describe in careful Latin, a peddler might exaggerate, and a sleepless farmer might think about all day while pretending to listen to his Lord Steward. Tonight's story is about the imagined world of medieval English poppy milk, the strange, sleepy remedy that the old transcript turns into a whole village culture of pain relief. Bedtime ritual, moral suspicion, market gossip, noble indulgence, morning grogginess, and jokes told by wandering performers. We are not here to learn from it as a remedy. We are not here to imitate it. We are watching the past from a safe distance, the way one watches candlelight move across a wall. Old preparations could be uncertain, powerful, and dangerous, and people in earlier centuries often lived much closer to risk than we do now. But as a bedtime story, this topic reveals something very human. People have always wanted relief. They have always wanted the baby to stop crying, the tooth to stop aching, the mind to stop circling, the wind to stop finding every gap in the wall. They wanted what you may want now, in your own century and your own room. A little warmth, a little quiet, and permission to drift away. So settle in, let your shoulders loosen, let the present grow dim around the edges. The road outside is muddy, but you do not have to walk it. The bells are far away, the hearth is low, someone has banked the coals for the night. Somewhere beyond the little window, the fields are dark, and the poppies are only shadows bending in the wind. And now gently, we wake in England, somewhere in the late 14th century, not because morning has arrived, but because the night has not yet allowed anyone to sleep. The first thing you notice is the sound of the house. A medieval cottage is not silent, even after dark. It creaks as if it is remembering every winter it has survived. The thatch shifts softly above you. The door sighs in the wind. Somewhere near the wall, a small animal conducts its private business with the confidence of a tenant who has never paid rent. The fire on the hearth is low, but not gone, and every now and then, a coal collapses with a quiet red sigh. You are lying on straw, or something close to it, under a blanket that smells of smoke, lanolin, damp wool, and yesterday's weather. Beside you, someone is snoring with the mournful rhythm of a tired ox. A child turns in sleep and mutters. A dog scratches once, twice, then gives up beyond the partition, if your household is fortunate enough to have one. Cow shifts her weight, and the sound seems enormous in the dark. This is bedtime before privacy. The whole household has folded itself into one smoky interior. Parents, children, servants if there are any, animals if there is space, and all the noises that come with being alive in close quarters. There are no sealed windows, no white noise machines, no separate nursery, no gentle thermostat holding the room at one polite temperature. Night is a communal event. Sleep is negotiated, not guaranteed. The day has been long. Your hands remember the handle of a tool. Your shoulders remember carrying wood. Your back remembers bending over earth, water, grain, cloth, or some other task that did not care whether you were tired. Even lying still, you can feel the day continuing in the body like an echo. Outside, the wind moves over the fields. It presses at the walls and finds every gap. If it rains, the cottage smells wetter. If it freezes, the cold gathers at the floor. If there is illness nearby, the night feels crowded with listening. If there are debts, they sit at the foot of the bed like patient strangers. If there is hunger, even a little, it sharpens the mind when the mind should be growing soft. This is why the promise of sleep matters so much. Sleep is not merely rest. It is escape from pain, from noise, from fear, from the memory of work and the knowledge that the same work waits tomorrow. For the poor, sleep may be the only luxury that costs nothing, though even it is often interrupted by crying children, restless animals, coughing neighbors, and the sudden thought that a gate has been left unlatched. So when a remedy appears, people listen. Perhaps it comes from a monastery garden first, where monks grow plants in long beds between stone walls. Perhaps it comes by way of a wandering healer with a satchel full of dried roots and stories. Perhaps it arrives through trade, rumor, borrowed seed, and the old human habit of discovering that a plant can change how the body feels, then telling someone else before supper. The poppy itself is beautiful in a fragile way. Its petals look too thin for the world, like colored paper left out in the rain. Its seed head, after the bloom has passed, has a quiet, sealed look, as though it is keeping a secret from the field. In gardens, it can be ornamental. In medicine, it can be serious. In folklore, it belongs to sleep, forgetting, and the soft border between comfort and danger. The village does not discuss it in modern scientific language. No one speaks of alkaloids or receptors or carefully standardized preparations. They speak in older terms. It cools, it eases, it quiets. It settles the nerves, it helps the child rest, it softens pain, it brings a heavy sleep. The words are gentle, the reality may not always be. Still, when the nights are long and pain is common, people do not wait for perfect understanding. They work with what they have: herbs, prayers, experience, mistakes, inherited advice, and the memory of what seemed to help last time. By the hearth, an older woman lifts the covered cup from the shelf. She does not make a performance of it. This is household knowledge, not theater. Her movements are slow, familiar, and cautious. Whatever is in the cup has already been prepared elsewhere, by someone who believes they know what they are doing. It is warmed, not hurried. The smell is faintly earthy, slightly sweet if honey has touched it, and heavy in a way that makes the room seem quieter before anyone drinks. No one calls it a miracle. Not tonight. It is too ordinary for that. It is part of the small collection of things people use to survive the dark. Fire, blankets, stories, saints' names, charms under the bed, a hand on a child's back, and this strange sleepy draught that might bring a few hours of peace. A cup is passed. A child is hushed. A tired man closes his eyes before he has even finished swallowing. A woman watches the fire and waits for her own thoughts to loosen. Outside, the wind continues. Inside, the room slowly lowers its voice. And already, we can see the shape of the story. Not a single addiction, not one simple crisis, but a whole culture of exhaustion, reaching for rest with the tools it had. Wise and foolish, tender and risky, comic and sad, all at once. Let us begin where many medieval remedies begin, in the garden. A monastery garden at dawn is one of the quieter places in medieval England. The walls hold back the road noise, the bargaining, the animals, the shouts from the yard. Inside, the beds are arranged with the steady logic of people who believe order is a form of prayer. There are familiar plants here: sage, rue, fennel, mint, batani, hyssop, lavender, comfrey, wormwood, and many others whose names sound like half-forgotten spells. When spoken in the morning air, the monks move slowly between the beds. Their sandals darken with dew, their sleeves brush the leaves. Bees begin their work without waiting for permission. Somewhere in the cloister, a bell calls the day into shape. The poppies stand in their appointed place. They are not loud flowers. Despite their color, they seem delicate, almost drowsy, bending slightly on their stems. When they bloom, they make the Eab garden look briefly festive. But the monks are not only admiring them. The plant has value. It belongs to the monastery's world of healing, where herbs, classical texts, local practice, prayer, observation, and guesswork all live side by side. In the infirmary, sickness arrives in many forms: a traveler with a fever, a laborer with a broken sleep from pain, a child crying from teething, an old woman with a cough that keeps her awake, a brother whose joints ache when the weather changes, a mind troubled by grief, a body exhausted by work. The monastery is not a hospital in the modern sense, but for many people, it is the nearest place that feels like help. The monk in charge of remedies may be learned, careful, and kind. He may also be overworked, underinformed, and much too confident in a margin note copied from someone who copied it from someone else 3 centuries earlier. Medieval medicine is like that. It contains wisdom, error, faith, practical experience, and a great many liquids in jars. The poppy is handled with respect because it has power. Everyone knows in some way that it is not like mint or rosemary. It is not just fragrance. It changes the body. It can quiet pain. It can bring sleep. It can also go too far. That boundary is the uneasiness at the edge of the remedy. So the apothecary monk writes carefully in his book: a mark here, a warning there, a note about sleep, a note about pain, a note about a patient who rested well, another about one who slept too long and woke confused. The handwriting is small and brown with age in our imagination, but at the time it is fresh ink, laid down by a living hand in a room smelling of wax, parchment, and dried herbs. Villagers come to the gate. They come because the monastery has plants, books, and men who can read them. They come because a toothache can turn a whole night into a punishment. They come because a baby crying without rest can make an entire household desperate. They come because pain has always pushed people toward whatever hope is nearest. A woman stands with a shawl around her shoulders, holding a child whose face is hot from crying. A shepherd waits behind her, shifting from one foot to the other, one cheek swollen. An old man leans on a stick and says he has not slept properly since Michaelmas. The monk listens. He asks questions, though perhaps not the ones a modern doctor would ask. He speaks of balance, humors, rest, prayer, moderation. Then he reaches for the remedy. We will not follow his hands too closely. This is not a recipe. It is enough to know that medieval people prepared plant medicines in many ways, often without the precision we would consider safe. The uncertainty is part of the story. A little might soothe, too much might harm, and no one in the room has a printed label, a controlled dose, or a physician with modern training standing by the door. Still, the sick are grateful. The mother receives what she hopes will bring the child sleep. The shepherd hopes for relief. The old man hopes to stop hearing every mouse in the rafters until dawn. And the monk, for all the limitations of his world, hopes he has helped. That is important. We should not turn the past only into a joke. It is easy to laugh at strange remedies when we are warm, lit, vaccinated, and surrounded by pharmacies. But the people in this story are not foolish because they want relief. They are human. They are doing what humans always do, gathering knowledge from plants, stories, failures, and whatever authority they trust. The monastery garden becomes a place where sleep is cultivated alongside cabbage and prayer. But no remedy stays within walls forever. Seeds travel, advice travels. A woman who received help tells her sister. A servant hears the monk speaking. A gardener saves a seed head. A traveler carries a story to the next village. Soon the poppy is not only a monastery plant. It appears in cottage gardens, behind fences, near beehives, in small patches where useful things grow. Leeks, beans, onions, herbs, flowers for saints' days, and flowers for sleep. By late afternoon, when the bell rings again and the monks return to their offices, the garden has already given part of itself to the world beyond the wall. The flowers nod in the evening air. The garden keeps its own silence. But outside the wall, the world is full of movement. Seeds travel in sleeves, in sacks, in the corner of a servant's apron, in the memory of a patient who watched which bed the monk approached, in the careful hands of a gardener who thinks a useful plant should not belong only to stone walls and cloisters. A plant does not need a royal decree to migrate. It only needs usefulness, rumor, and a person willing to carry it a little farther. By summer's end, someone has saved a head for planting. By autumn, someone has asked a question too casually. By the next spring, a few cottage gardens contain flowers that were not there before. They stand beside onions and beans, near beehives, under the suspicious eye of a neighbor who pretends to be looking for her hen. This is how household medicine often spreads, not as a revolution, but as a whisper with roots. A monk may have written the remedy in a book, but the village writes it differently. It writes it in gestures: a cup warmed after dark, a bundle hidden from damp, a warning passed from aunt to niece, a story about a man who used too much and slept through something important, a story about a woman who finally rested after pain had kept her awake for weeks, a story about a child who stopped crying long enough for the entire household to remember kindness. The puppy becomes part of a wider pattern of medieval survival. People know plants through use, fear, habit, and reputation. Some plants feed, some flavor, some heal a little, some poison. Some do more than one thing, depending on how they are handled, when they are gathered, and whether the person using them has respect or impatience in their hands. The sleepy flower belongs to that uncertain group. It is useful enough to be desired and serious enough to be feared. That combination gives it power in the imagination long before anyone fully understands its chemistry. And beyond the monastery, in the village where roofs crouch low beneath the weather, people are beginning to learn that the sleepy flower can make the night softer and the morning stranger. A village does not adopt a remedy all at once. It circles it first. Someone tries it for pain and says it helped. Someone else says it made them dream too heavily. A grandmother claims she knew all along. A neighbor insists the monks are hiding the best version. The priest frowns. The blacksmith asks whether it works on wives who complain about snoring. A child hears the adults whisper and decides the flower must be magic. Soon, the poppy becomes part of the village's night vocabulary. Not every house has it. Not every person trusts it. Some fear it. Some praise it. Some pretend they do not use it while keeping a little tucked away. But everyone knows what it means when a tired mother says, "The baby may sleep better tonight." Or when an old man says he has something from the herb garden that might help his joints stop shouting. In the cottage, dusk arrives early. Work ends not because the work is finished, but because light has gone. The animals are secured. The door is barred. A pot hangs over the coals. Bread, if there is bread, is divided. Pottage steams in wooden bowls. The household gathers in the low glow of the hearth. This is the hour when worries rise. During the day, there is too much to do. Hands are busy, feet are moving, someone is calling, lifting, digging, mending, churning. But at night, when the body finally lies down, Thoughts have room to walk. Will the grain last? Will the rent be paid? Will the cow calve safely? Will the cough improve? Will the Lord's men come tomorrow? Will the roof survive another storm? Will the child stop crying before the whole household loses patience? The remedy promises a small mercy. It is not luxurious. It is not glamorous. It is not the polished cup of a noble household or the carefully labeled jar of a monastery. It is a humble thing, warmed by the fire, spoken of in practical tones. The person who prepares it has learned from someone else, and that someone else learned from someone before them. The instructions are vague, the caution real, the confidence uneven. A cup passes from hand to hand, though not always to everyone. Some take a little, some refuse, some are not allowed, some are watched closely. The older people remember stories of overuse, the younger people remember only that it brings sleep. The taste is not the point. Medieval comfort does not always taste good. It often tastes like necessity, but warmth matters. The cup warms the hands first, then the chest, then the space behind the eyes where worry has been sitting. Someone adds honey when there is honey. Someone else says honey is wasteful. Another insists the right blessing matters more than sweetness. The room is full of opinions, most of them tired. Slowly, the household quiets. A child who had been whimpering grows heavy against a shoulder. The dog stops scratching. The old man by the wall closes his mouth halfway through a complaint about the miller. A woman sits with her knees drawn close, watching the coals blur. The walls still creak, but the sounds seem farther away. Even the wind at the door becomes less like a threat and more like weather, moving somewhere outside the circle of firelight. This is the part people remember. They remember the softness, not the risk. They remember the sleep, not the uncertain strength. They remember waking after a rare stretch of oblivion and feeling, for one moment, that the world had been kind. In hard societies, relief can become beloved very quickly. The village begins to build rituals around it. Someone keeps a special cup. Someone hangs dried herbs near the bed. Someone tells a bedtime story while the drink is cooling. Someone hums a tune used only at night. Someone jokes that the flower is more reliable than prayer, then looks toward the door in case the priest has heard. A remedy becomes a habit when it is tied to rhythm. Fire down, door bowed, children settled, cup warmed, story told, eyes lowered, breath slowed, sleep approaching like fog over a field. But habits have shadows. The next morning may be slow. A man may oversleep and miss the best hour for work. A woman may wake with her head thick and her mouth dry. A child may be too quiet for too long, causing fear before relief. Someone may forget a promise made the night before. Someone may say they will use less next time, then remember the cold, noisy dark and say nothing more. In this way, the village learns both dependence and caution. It learns that a thing can be helpful and troubling at the same time. It learns that the desire for sleep can bend judgment. It learns that private remedies can become public gossip by breakfast. At the well, people talk. Was your household quiet last night? Quiet enough, strong cup then. A pause, a shrug, a change of subject. The line between medicine and indulgence is not drawn in ink. It shifts with pain, fatigue, weather, conscience, and who is asking. If the priest asks, it was for toothache. If the neighbor asks, it was for sleep. If the Lord's steward asks, nobody knows anything about any flower. And still the poppies grow. They grow at the edge of gardens. They dry in rafters. They travel in pockets. They appear in market baskets beneath more innocent goods. They become part of the village's hidden economy of rest. By now, the sleepy flower has moved from remedy to rumor, from rumor to routine, and from routine to something people may find difficult to imagine living without. Let the room soften here. The fire is low. The first loop of the story has closed. People were tired. A plant promised sleep. The village accepted the promise, carefully at first, then less carefully, because the night is long and the human heart is very easily persuaded by rest. Before we leave the cottage for the high hall, let the night sit for a little longer around the low fire. A medieval household does not fall asleep all at once. It sinks by stages. The smallest child goes first, heavy and warm against a shoulder. Then the older children, pretending to stay awake for the story and failing. Then the tired adults, who keep speaking in shorter sentences until even their worries seem to lose grammar. The old remain awake longest, perhaps because old bones are less easily persuaded, perhaps because they have learned that silence is one of the few luxuries no one can tax. The covered cup, if it has been used, is rinsed and put away, or perhaps it remains untouched, kept for a more painful night. This is another kind of knowledge, knowing when not to use what is powerful. In the best households, caution is not a sermon, it is a habit. Folded into the way an older hand pauses before reaching for the shelf. The hearth settles. Embers turn from orange to a duller red. Smoke finds the roof and disappears through the darkness above. A body shifts in the straw. Someone sighs from the deep place that comes just before sleep. The cottage is still uncomfortable by modern standards, but comfort is always measured by what one has survived. Tonight, the door is barred. The animals are near. The family is together. The wind is outside. For one moment, the remedy is less important than the human arrangement around it. Warmth shared, danger named, fatigue softened by routine. This is the true sleep technology of the village, not only the plant, but the circle of care around the fire. Now we move upward, from the low cottage to the high hall, where the same desire wears better fabric. In the manor house, sleep looks richer, but it is not necessarily easier. The hall is larger than the cottage, though not always warmer. Tapestries hang along the walls, partly for beauty, partly to soften the cold stone. Rushes cover the floor, servants move through smoke and lamplight. Dogs curl beneath tables, the great hearth glows brighter than any peasant fire, yet drafts still find the ankles of anyone important enough to complain. The lord and lady have better beds. They have linen, fur, feather mattresses, if fortune smiles, hangings to block the chill, and servants to bring what is needed. But a better bed does not silence the mind. Noble worries have different clothes. There are accounts to settle, tenants to manage, disputes to judge, marriages to arrange, cousins to distrust, letters to answer, neighboring lords to flatter or threaten, wars to fear, taxes to negotiate, bishops to host, and relatives who seem to multiply around inheritance. In a cottage, a person may lie awake worrying about rent. In a manor, a person may lie awake worrying about who will collect it, who will resist it, and whether the king will demand more before spring. The sleepy remedy enters noble life through the side door, carried by physicians, monks, kitchen servants, traveling apothecaries, and the unstoppable human talent for imitating whatever seems useful. At first it is medicinal. A lady cannot sleep after childbirth. An aging knight has pain in an old wound. A lord is anxious before a journey. A guest has a toothache that makes conversation unbearable. A chaplain suggests something soothing from the monastery. A physician mutters about rest. A servant is sent. A cup arrives. The effect is remembered soon. The manor has its own version of the village ritual, only more polished. The cup is finer, the sweetness more expensive, the fire larger, the language more discreet. No one says dependence. They say restorative. They say physician's recommendation. They say for the nerves. They say after the strain of the day. The words change. But the desire is the same in the private chamber after the hall has grown quieter and the servants have cleared the last dishes. A warm cup may be brought on a tray. The lady sits near the bed, hair loosened from its daytime arrangement, a robe around her shoulders. Her maid waits. The candlelight makes everything softer than it is. Outside the shutters, wind moves over the courtyard. She drinks not because she is weak, but because the day has been full of being watched. A lord may drink too, though he makes a joke of it. He claims he needs sleep before hunting, before judgment, before travel, before facing the steward's accounts. He laughs, then sleeps so deeply that the steward waits half the next morning outside the chamber door, holding a ledger and losing hope. This is how the remedy becomes social. If one noble household serves it, another hears. If one lady praises it, another requests it. If one guest sleeps through the night after a long ride, the story travels with him. Soon the drink is not only a treatment, but a sign of refinement, access, and the privilege of turning sleep into ceremony. The village uses it to survive noise and pain. The manor uses it to soften pressure and boredom. Both call it necessary. At a feast, someone may joke about it. A court poet may mention the lord who missed his own hunting party after too generous a cup. A lady may smile behind her hand at a guest who nodded off during a long poem. The humor is gentle, because everyone knows the temptation. Even people who condemn it privately may accept it when the night is long enough. But noble overuse creates noble complications. A counsel delayed because the lord is not yet fully awake. A letter answered with unusual softness. A family argument postponed so many times it almost becomes peace. A young heir who sleeps through lessons. A lady who claims a dream had meaning and changes the seating arrangement at dinner. A steward who begins timing difficult conversations for the hour before the evening cup, when his master is too weary to object but not yet asleep. The manor adjusts. Servants learn the rhythms. The kitchen knows when to prepare warm milk or a gentler substitute. The maid knows when her mistress wishes to sleep and when she merely wishes not to speak. The chaplain knows which sermons on moderation should be delivered before, not after. The household begins yawning. Here again, the same truth appears. A remedy is never only a remedy once it enters daily life. It becomes schedule, status, excuse, joke, ritual, and sometimes problem. Yet for the listener drifting tonight, the manor offers a soft image. A chamber lit by one candle, a heavy bed with curtains drawn against the cold, a tray set quietly on a small table, a woman removing a ring from her finger, a man in the hall laughing too loudly, then losing his place in the story, a dog sighing near the hearth, snow beginning outside, not fiercely, but with the patience of weather that knows it has all night. In the cottage and in the manor, rich and poor meet at the same human place. They want the mind to stop turning. They want the body to stop hurting. They want the dark to feel less crowded. Sleep is the great equalizer, and sleeplessness is too. The poppy does not care about rank. It does not bow to a lord or pity a peasant. It brings its softness and its danger wherever people invite it in. In some noble houses, the sleepy habit becomes almost fashionable. Not openly, of course. Fashion rarely admits when it is built on weakness. It calls weakness refinement, nerves, sensitivity, the burden of rank, the exhaustion of statecraft, the difficulty of managing unreliable tenants, and even more unreliable relatives. A peasant says, "I cannot sleep because my back hurts." A lord says, "I require a restorative after the pressures of estate business." The cup may be similar. The sentence is not. A lady may speak of dreams more delicately than a farmer does. She may say the night brought unusual images, a garden under moonlight, a dead mother smiling, a bird with silver wings, a saint whose message was almost clear until morning removed its edges. Her maid listens and says the dream sounds meaningful because maids learn early which truths should be polished before they are returned. A lord may pretend the remedy has no hold over him. He may laugh at the very idea while making certain the household stores remain full. His steward knows better. Servants always know where power is most dependent because they carry the trays, open the shutters, delay the visitors, and invent explanations when their masters are still asleep. This creates a strange equality inside the inequality. The peasant and the lord do not share much. They do not share land, food, freedom, or safety, but they share nerves, pain, aging joints, bad dreams, and the humiliating fact that the body does not respect rank. Even under embroidered covers, a sleepless man is still a sleepless man. This is why the poppy story slips so easily between cottage and manor. It does not belong to one class. It follows the universal geography of discomfort: the tooth, the wound, the crying child, the anxious mind, the too long night. And because medieval England is woven through with the church, the next question rises almost at once. If this flower brings rest, is it mercy, medicine, temptation, or sin? The church bell does not sound sleepy. It cuts through dawn, through fog, through the half-waking village, through the dreams of people who would rather remain under blankets. It calls bodies toward prayer and reminds everyone that time belongs not only to hunger, labor, weather, and sleep, but also to God. In a world where the church blesses fields, marks marriages, hears confessions, names sins, comforts the dying, and explains much of what cannot otherwise be explained, no popular habit remains merely personal for long. Poppy milk raises questions. If it eases pain, is it a gift? If it brings sleep, is it kindness? If it makes people idle, is it sloth? If it produces strange dreams, are they visions, nonsense, or something worse? If a monk prepares it, does that make it holy? If a villager drinks it for pleasure instead of suffering, does the moral weather change? The parish priest stands at the center of these questions, sometimes more firmly than he feels. He knows his people. He knows the old woman's joints ache. He knows the miller's baby has cried for 3 nights. He knows the shepherd's tooth has swollen his face. He knows the winter has been hard. He may even know, privately, the relief of a cup that lets pain loosen its grip. But he also knows the language of warning. On Sunday, he preaches moderation. His voice rises beneath the beams of the church, and the congregation shifts on benches, half listening, half fighting sleep. He speaks of vigilance, the discipline of the soul, the danger of surrendering too easily to bodily comfort. He does not name every household, because that would take too long and cause trouble before dinner. But everyone understands: beware the sleep that steals duty. Beware the comfort that becomes master. Beware the cup that makes prayer shorter and excuses longer. Some nod solemnly. Some feel accused. Some wonder whether the priest's own eyes look a little heavy. Afterward, in confession, the matter becomes personal. Forgive me, Father. I used the sleepy draught, though I had no great pain. Forgive me, Father. I slept through Mass. Forgive me, Father. I said I would take only a little, then woke when the hens were already in the yard. The priest listens behind the screen, or in the dim corner where confessions are made. He assigns prayers, counsel, perhaps a fast, perhaps restraint. He urges care. He may condemn excess while allowing necessity. Medieval morality often lives in these uncomfortable distinctions. Medicine is permitted. Indulgence is suspect. Suffering is not loved exactly, but it is familiar enough to be considered spiritually useful. Still, life complicates doctrine. The monastery continues to treat pain. The infirmary does not close because a sermon was stern. The priest himself may send a suffering parishioner to the monks. A mother with a truly sleepless child will not be comforted by abstract theology alone. A man in agony may not be persuaded that pain is purifying at 3 a.m. So the church's answer becomes what many human answers become: caution, contradiction, and local judgment. Use it if you must. Do not love it too much. Pray before sleep. Give thanks after waking. Do not make a god of relief. This tension gives the village much to discuss. At the well, One woman claims the priest is right, and people have grown soft. Another says it is easy to praise wakefulness when one does not have a baby with teeth coming in. A third says her aunt had a dream after taking the remedy and saw St. Catherine standing beside a field of flowers, which proves something, though no one is sure what. Stories of dreams begin to circulate. A child sees angels. An old man hears his dead wife singing. A widow dreams of a bright garden and wakes comforted. A drunkard dreams he is being chased by a giant poppy with the face of the bishop. The village decides some dreams are holy, some foolish, and some best left untold. The church cannot entirely control the meaning of sleep. Sleep belongs to the body, but dreams belong to the imagination. And the imagination is a difficult parishioner. It wanders. It combines fear, memory, longing, food, sermons, and plant medicine into visions no priest can fully sort. The poppy becomes, in moral terms, a threshold on one side. Care, medicine, mercy, the mother with the crying child, the old man with pain, the exhausted worker needing rest. On the other side, excess, idleness, avoidance, mornings lost, duties missed, souls too comfortable to examine themselves. Most people live between these sides, as people usually do. And for the sleepy listener, this is a good place to rest for a moment. Imagine the small church in the morning light, the stone floor cold underfoot, the smell of wax and damp wool, the priest's voice moving through the nave, and half the congregation trying very sincerely not to yawn. It is not wickedness, it is tiredness. Medieval tiredness has a long face, rough hands, and a habit of arriving before sunrise. The church may warn it, the flower may soothe it, neither fully defeats it. When the sermon ends, people step back into the gray day. The bell stops, the village resumes somewhere. Behind a cottage, poppies bend in the wind, innocent looking, and morally complicated. And when evening comes again, the same question will return with the smoke from the hearth. How much rest is enough, and when does comfort become a chain? Every village has someone who knows the plants better than anyone else. She may be called a healer, a wise woman, an herbalist, a midwife, or something less generous depending on who is speaking and whether she has recently offended the priest. She knows where mint grows wild. She knows which bark eases pain. She knows which roots must be handled carefully, which leaves are harmless, which berries children should never touch, and which remedies work mostly because the person receiving them believes they will. Her cottage smells like dried summer. Bundles hang from beams. Lavender, thyme, rosemary, yarrow, mugwort, nettle, hops, and plants whose names are spoken with both confidence and caution. Clay jars line the shelves. Some are labeled with marks only she understands. Others are known by scent, memory, or the story of the person who brought them. The poppy is part of her world, though not the whole of it. She is too practical to trust one remedy for everything. She has seen people overdo what once helped them. She has seen hope become habit. She has also seen a few hours of sleep save a family from unraveling. So when people ask for the strong thing first, she often begins somewhere gentler. Try lavender under the pillow. Try warm water for the feet. Try a quieter evening. Try not arguing with your brother before bed. Try prayer. If prayer calms you, try breathing with the child until the crying passes. The villagers listen politely, then ask about the poppy. This is the beginning of the medieval wellness arms race. One household swears by lavender, another by hops, another by a charm tied with red thread near the bed. Someone drinks ale and calls it medicine. Someone uses a pillow stuffed with herbs so pungent that sleep arrives mainly to escape the smell. A grandmother insists lettuce water cools the blood. A shepherd claims counting sheep is an insult to sheep and does not work. The wise woman hears all of it. She knows that sleepless people will try almost anything. They will hang horseshoes. They will whisper rhymes. They will walk around the house 3 times under the moon. They will avoid certain foods, seek certain saints, warm certain stones, drink bitter teas, chew roots, bathe when water allows, and blame the mattress when all else fails. In this crowded world of remedies, poppy milk becomes the remedy people speak of in lowered voices because it is the one they believe works too well. The healer does not treat it like a toy. She reminds them that rest brought by powerful plants is not the same as ordinary sleep. She tells stories because stories are how caution travels where rules cannot. There was a man in the next village who took too much and missed his own market day. There was a woman who dreamed so fiercely she woke terrified. There was a household that used it for every complaint until the mornings became useless. There was a child who slept too deeply and frightened everyone half to death. No one knows how much of this is exact truth. It does not matter. The stories make people careful, at least for a while, but they also make the remedy more interesting. Human beings are like that. Tell them a thing is dangerous, and some will avoid it. Others will ask what kind of dangerous. A third group will wonder whether danger is negotiable if the night is noisy enough. The healer's cottage becomes a place of negotiation. A woman arrives with eggs to trade. A man brings a bundle of kindling. Someone offers a small wheel of cheese. Someone else asks for credit, promising payment after harvest. The healer listens to symptoms and to excuses. She knows when a person truly needs help and when a person simply wants the heavy sleep that has become the village's favorite shortcut through sorrow. She does not always say yes. That makes her unpopular with some and trusted by others. Meanwhile, less careful sellers appear at the edges of the market. They claim special mixtures, secret monastery blends, foreign knowledge, blessed flowers, extra strength, comfort, saintly sleep, dreamless sleep, noble sleep, anything that will make a tired person reach into a pouch or basket. The healer dislikes them, not because she opposes trade, but because false confidence is dangerous. A watered remedy may do nothing. A strong one may do too much. A strange mixture may bring sickness instead of rest. A desperate buyer may not know the difference until morning. So the village develops a second kind of literacy, the reading of remedies and the people who sell them. Does the seller meet your eye? Does the cup smell wrong? Does the story sound too polished? Does he promise no risk at all? Has he changed his name since last market day? These questions are not scientific, but they are survival tools. The healer continues her work. She tends births, fevers, coughs, burns, sleeplessness, grief, and the consequences of human stubbornness. Some nights she prepares gentle teas. Some nights she refuses to give anything stronger. Some nights she sits with a family until a child finally sleeps. No poppy needed, only rocking, warmth, and time. This is important for the sleep story. The most powerful comfort in the room is not always the cup. Sometimes it is the ritual around it, the hands preparing, the voice reassuring, the fire kept low, the household growing still, the belief that someone knows what to do. Even now, across the centuries, we can recognize that need. The healer closes her shutters as night thickens. The hanging herbs barely move in the quiet air. Outside, villagers walk home with bundles, jars, advice, warnings, and private intentions. Some will use what she gave exactly as told. Some will improvise. Some will tell themselves that tomorrow they will be more moderate, more disciplined, more awake. The moon rises over thatched roofs in the gardens. The poppies are dark shapes now. The lavender is only scent. The village prepares again for the nightly experiment of being human in the dark. The healer's cottage also reveals another quiet truth. People often trust what is personal more than what is official. A monastery may have books. A lord may have authority. A priest may have doctrine. But the wise woman has sat beside the bed. She has seen the baby's face when the fever breaks. She has watched a grieving widow finally sleep. She has heard the same man swear 7 times that he will be moderate, and has learned to measure his promises against the weather, the harvest, and the size of his ego. Trust is built from repetition. A person returns because last time the pain eased, or because even when nothing could be cured, someone listened. In a world where many sufferings cannot be solved, being witnessed is a remedy of its own. This is why the poppy habit is not merely chemical in the culture of the village. It is social. It belongs to relationships. Who prepares it? Who warns against it? Who profits from it? Who hides it? Who admits needing it? Who refuses it? Who sings about it later? The strongest sleep stories are never only about sleep. They are about what people do when they are vulnerable in front of one another. And where there is desire, there is trade. Market day brings mud, noise, and opportunity. Cabbages lie in damp piles. Chickens complain from baskets. A boy runs between stalls, carrying something that might be bread or might be a lost shoe. A woman argues over the price of onions with the seriousness of a diplomat negotiating a treaty. Smoke from cooking fires drifts low over the square, mixing with the smells of wool, animals, wet leather, ale, and human patience nearing its limit. Somewhere near the edge of this ordinary chaos, the quiet trade begins. It is not always illegal in the clear modern sense, because medieval regulation is a patchwork of custom, lordly rights, church pressure, local suspicion, and whatever the reeve feels energetic enough to enforce. But it is discreet. The poppy stronger uses belong to the category of things everyone knows about, and no one wants shouted across the market. A basket of eggs may hide dried flower heads beneath the straw. A bundle of herbs may contain something more valuable than it appears. A small jar may pass from one hand to another, while the seller loudly discusses turnips. The buyers are easy to understand. A mother whose infant has slept badly, a laborer with pain in his back, a widow afraid of dreams, a man who says it is for his old father, a noble servant buying on behalf of a household that prefers not to be seen buying, a young man who has heard stories and likes stories too much. The sellers are varied. Some are careful herb women with reputations to protect. Some are monastery gardeners supplementing income in ways the abbot would not enjoy. Some are villagers who grew more than they needed. Some are frauds with confident voices and very suspicious jars. Some may not know themselves whether what they offer is weak, strong, stale, diluted, or dangerous. The market loves uncertainty, because uncertainty creates bargaining. Is it good? Good enough from where? From a garden that minds its own business. Will it help sleep? It has helped sleep before. That is not an answer. It is the kind of answer one gets before noon in a muddy square. The poppy trade shows how quickly a private need becomes an economy. Sleep becomes something one can barter for. Relief is measured in eggs, wool, labor, favors, silence, and promises. A cup of rest may cost a chicken. A stronger remedy may cost a secret. And secrets, in a village, are very unstable currency. By evening, everyone knows who bought what, or thinks they do. The miller's wife was seen near the herd stall. The reeve's brother bought a covered jar. The priest's housekeeper asked too many questions about dried flowers. Someone says the Lord's own kitchen boy was there, pretending to buy leeks with a purse far too heavy for leeks. The trade becomes social theater. People pretend not to notice while noticing everything. They condemn the habit in public and inquire privately after the seller. They laugh at the neighbor who overslept and then ask whether his source was reliable. They warn against excess while wondering whether moderation might be improved by a better supplier. Of course, bad trade creates bad mornings. There are watered mixtures that do nothing except disappoint. There are strange mixtures that taste of pond and regret. There are overstrong preparations that leave a person thick-headed, frightened, or missing an entire day's work. There are sellers who vanish after one market, There are buyers too embarrassed to complain, because complaining would require admitting what they bought. The village collects these stories like coins. A man drank from a traveling peddler's jar and dreamed his roof was singing. A woman bought a cheap remedy and stayed awake all night, furious enough to clean the entire cottage before dawn. A shepherd took something he thought was mild and slept through the moving of his own flock. A servant carried a cup to the manor and delivered it to the wrong aunt, causing a family dispute that ended only because everyone involved grew too drowsy to continue. These stories become warnings, jokes, and advertisements at once. In the middle of the market, the official world pretends it is in control. The reeve watches, the priestess approves, the Lord Steward mutters about unauthorized trade. But enforcement is tiring, and everyone involved is tired. Besides, the authorities themselves are not immune to sleeplessness. A reeve with a toothache becomes much less principled after midnight. So the market continues. It is not a dark underworld in the dramatic sense. It is more ordinary than that. It is the human need for rest finding channels through mud, gossip, and barter. It is a sleepy economy built not on luxury, but on the ache of bodies and the fear of another long night awake. Let this market scene fade softly now. The bargaining lowers. The animals are led away. The last onions are counted. A woman hides a small bundle beneath her shawl. A peddler packs up before anyone asks difficult questions. The bell rings the hour. The square empties into lanes. By nightfall, the jars and bundles have entered homes. The market leaves traces behind it. Gossip in doorways, new bundles tucked into rafters, coins missing from pouches, a peddler's exaggerated promise repeated with increasing confidence by people who did not believe it an hour ago. A woman hides her purchase from a husband who will ask for it later. A man hides his from a wife who already knows. A servant carries a small package toward the manor under the innocent cover of buying candles. When the moon rises, every household decides what kind of night it will attempt. Some choose caution, some choose comfort, some choose denial, which is a poor blanket, but a common one. Some tell themselves the remedy is only for pain, then discover that worry can be made to resemble pain if the night is long enough. The market, in this sense, does not end at sunset. It continues inside the mind, where people bargain with themselves. Only a little, only tonight, only because the weather has turned, only because the child is restless, only because tomorrow will be hard, only because yesterday was hard. Human beings are excellent at finding doors through their own rules. Medieval villagers were no exception. The difference is that their doors were made of wood, smoke, hunger, pain, and the heavy dark of a world with few reliable comforts. And by morning, the whole village may know whose cup was too strong. The morning after too much sleep can feel strangely unjust. You wanted rest, you got rest, perhaps too much. Now the world is bright in a way that seems personally unkind. The rooster sounds like a herald of judgment. The floor is farther away than you remember. Your mouth is dry, your thoughts arrive wrapped in wool. Someone is asking whether you promised to mend a fence last night, and you are not in a position to deny anything with confidence. The poppy morning has its own atmosphere. Across the village, people emerge slowly, doors open later than usual. Smoke rises from hearths at odd times. The blacksmith stares at his tools as though they are distant relatives. The baker's bread is behind schedule. A child, unusually cheerful, announces that everyone in the household slept so long the cat finished breakfast first. No one wants to be the first to say what happened. Rough night? No, restful? Very restful. Too restful. The jokes begin because jokes make embarrassment easier to carry. Someone says the miller slept through the bell. Someone else says the miller's bell slept through the miller. The old man by the well claims he saw a neighbor trying to have a serious conversation with a cabbage. A woman insists that if anyone promised free eggs during last night's fog of comfort, the promise should not count before witnesses. Laughter moves through the village. slow at first, then warmer. This is one of the ways communities survive their own habits. They make stories of them. They turn risk into humor, humor into warning, and warning into something that can be ignored next week with a familiar shrug. But beneath the comedy is a real cost. A heavy morning means work delayed. A delayed chore can matter. Fires must be watched, animals fed, fields tended, bread made, water carried, children supervised. Medieval life is not full of spare hours waiting politely for people to feel clear-headed. If the whole household wakes sluggish, the day does not pause in sympathy. A man forgets to latch the gate. A woman burns the pottage. An apprentice cuts leather badly. A child misses a task and blames the moon. A servant at the manor carries the wrong tray to the wrong room and begins a rumor that lasts 3 days. People promise caution, less next time, only when necessary, not before work days, not when the priest is already annoyed. Not the peddler's kind, not the strong batch. These promises have varying lifespans. By midday, many heads clear, the sun is higher, food helps. Cold water helps. Work, oddly enough, helps. The body remembers itself through movement. The village returns to its rhythm. Tools sound again. The baker catches up. The blacksmith swears in a more focused manner. Children resume being noisy enough to make adults miss the previous night's silence. The wise woman, hearing complaints, gives the same advice she has given before. Moderation, care. Do not treat every sadness as a toothache. Do not make sleep heavier than it needs to be. People nod. They respect her wisdom. They also remember how quiet the house was. The hangover becomes part of the bargain, not an official bargain. Never spoken plainly, but understood. A few hours of deep oblivion may be followed by a morning of fog. A night without worry may cost a day with blurred edges. Each person weighs this differently depending on pain, fear, exhaustion, and the amount of work waiting at dawn. For some, the cost is too high. They avoid it afterward, choosing lavender, prayer, ale, stories, or simple endurance. For others, the cost is acceptable. Better a slow morning than another night, staring into the dark while the roof creaks and the mind gnaws at itself. This is where habit deepens, not because people are silly, but because comfort is persuasive. Especially comfort that arrives when a person is most vulnerable, tired, cold, worried, and alone with the night. The village becomes a map of different relationships to the same remedy. The cautious user, the enthusiast, the secret drinker, the moral critic, the seller, the healer, the priest who warns against it, the priest who quietly asks after it when his tooth aches, the noble household that calls it medicine, the poor household that calls it a blessing, the old woman who calls it both and crosses herself. By late afternoon, the morning's embarrassment has already become story. Children repeat the cabbage joke. A song begins forming in someone's head. A traveling performer passing through next week will certainly hear about it and make it worse. This is how puppy milk moves from household habit into village culture. It becomes funny. It becomes familiar. It becomes part of the way people talk about sleep, work, weakness, pleasure, and the thin line between relief and regret. As evening approaches, the slow day softens. People are tired again, this time from having been tired all morning and then working anyway. Smoke rises, animals come in, the first stars appear. Someone says they will not have any tonight. Someone else says nothing, but checks the shelf before official concern arrives. The village passes through a smaller season of private resolutions. A woman marks a line in memory, not on market nights, not before washing day, not when the roof leaks, not when the baby is already quiet. A man makes a vow before witnesses, which everyone understands is weaker than a vow made before breakfast. An old couple agrees to keep the remedy hidden, except for true pain, then argue gently about what true pain means. The language of moderation becomes part of daily speech. Enough to rest, not enough to vanish, enough for pain, Not enough for laziness. Enough for mercy, not enough for foolishness. Such sayings sound wise because they are. They are also difficult, because the body in distress is not always a good judge. The person awake at midnight is less disciplined than the person making promises at noon. This gap between daylight intention and nighttime need is where many habits live. And because habits do not live only in cottages, because kings and councils eventually notice when whole regions seem to be yawning through their duties, the sleepy village begins to attract official concern. It is one thing for a household to oversleep. It is another for a kingdom to do it. Of course, no medieval king wakes one morning and says, "My realm has a poppy milk problem," in exactly those words. Government moves more slowly and with more parchment. It begins with complaints. Grain is late. Labor is unreliable. A reeve reports sluggish workers. A steward says tenants are missing duties. A priest writes that his parish has developed a troubling affection for unnatural sleep. A tax collector notices that people who are asleep are less cooperative than usual, though perhaps more peaceful. The reports travel upward. By the time they reach serious men in serious rooms, they have grown more dramatic. Whole villages idle, fields neglected, mills delayed, apprentices asleep, sermons interrupted by yawning, markets slow, lords indulgent, peasants evasive, monks suspiciously well supplied. The council does what councils often do when confronted with a complicated human habit. It imagines a rule. Perhaps an order is drafted. Perhaps a local ban is attempted. Perhaps the manor court finds a few people for unauthorized trade. Public drunkenness of the sleepy variety, or failing to appear for labor because they were, as one witness delicately puts it, overcome by arrest. A proclamation is read in the square. People gather. Chickens wander through the audience. The reeve clears his throat. The document speaks of disorder, idleness, unauthorized preparations, the need for honest work, the danger of excessive indulgence, and the duty of all subjects to remain sufficiently awake for the functioning of the realm. The villagers listen with the respectful expression people wear when they have no intention of obeying fully. Rules are easier to declare than to enforce. The first problem is identification. A cup of poppy milk looks, to a tired official, very much like something else. A household can call it broth, tonic, bedtime milk, old woman's comfort, monastery cordial, or a remedy for a complaint too private to discuss in the square. No inspector wants to stand in a cottage arguing with a grandmother about whether a warm cup is criminal when she has known his family since before he had teeth. The second problem is sympathy. The enforcers are tired too. The sheriff has back pain. The reeve's wife has not slept. The constable has a tooth that throbs in the cold. The priest has parishioners who cough through his sermons. Everyone understands the temptation because everyone lives in the same drafty century. The third problem is ingenuity. Villages hide what they value. Jars move behind flour sacks. Dried pods disappear into herb bundles. Coded phrases develop with the speed of gossip. Will you take something warm tonight? Is the lavender especially heavy this season? Did the monks send anything for your uncle's nerves? Nothing sounds illegal if said by a woman holding onions. Public confiscations do not help much. If officials burn seized plant material, the smoke itself becomes the subject of jokes. If they fine one seller, another appears. If they shame a notorious sleeper, he becomes briefly famous. Medieval communities have a way of absorbing authority into humor until authority becomes another character in the story. Still, the concern is not entirely foolish. A society built on manual labor cannot afford endless drowsiness. Fields must be worked, animals tended, bread baked, wool processed, roads maintained when anyone remembers to maintain them. Bells rung, children watched, fires kept safely. If too many people turn too often toward heavy sleep, the daily machinery slows. So the official world pushes back. The church preaches vigilance. Local courts impose fines. Lords restrict access to garden plants. Monasteries keep closer watch on stores. Healers become more careful about who receives what. Parents scold young men who treat remedies like dares. Songs are written mocking sleepy officials, which does not improve the official's mood. The result is not prohibition in the modern sense. It is a medieval compromise. Messy and local, use for illness, not idleness, use under guidance, not gossip, use quietly, not in public gatherings that end with half the village under the table. Use less, please use less. The village hears this and does what villages often do. It changes just enough to appear cooperative. Cups become smaller. Words become vaguer. Trade becomes more hidden. People choose nights more carefully. The wise woman gains authority because she can say no with the backing of fear and law. The priest feels briefly successful until he notices several parishioners looking unusually peaceful during a week of supposed restraint. Government has not ended the habit. It has given it new stories. There is the story of the inspector who fell asleep while searching a barn. The story of the reeve who confiscated a jar, then returned it after his own sleepless night. The story of the Manor lord who signed a stern warning, and later requested a private restorative for his nerves. The story of the priest who preached against drowsiness so long that everyone used the sermon as proof they needed help sleeping. These stories matter because they reveal the heart of the issue. The authorities are not outside the need for rest, they are inside it. Everyone in this world is inside it. The king may have a better bed, but he has a body. The bishop may have theology, but he has nights. The peasant may have no parchment, but he has experience. Sleep ignores hierarchy, and so the sleepy truce returns. The rules remain. The warnings continue. The remedy persists, quieter and more cautious, but not gone. As the years pass, the memory of official panic itself becomes drowsy. What remains is the rhythm, worry, rule, workaround, laughter, habit. Let the proclamation fade now. The parchment curls at the corners. The market resumes. The church bell rings. The village returns to its small negotiations with darkness. The official warnings do not end the practice, but they change its emotional color. What was once merely household comfort now has a hint of defiance. A cup taken after a stern sermon feels different from the same cup taken before anyone preached. A hidden jar feels more precious than one left plainly on a shelf. Suspicion increases value. Scarcity, even imagined scarcity, makes people attentive. This is how a remedy becomes part of village identity. People say, "Our healer knows better than the reeve." Our gardens grow stronger than the monasteries. Our old women understand sleep better than the court understands labor. The habit becomes tangled with pride, independence, resentment, and the ordinary pleasure of doing quietly what one has been loudly told not to do. Yet the flower itself remains indifferent. It grows or fails according to weather, soil, seed, pests, human care, and luck. And every habit has a nightmare. For a village that has learned to lean on the sleepy flower, the nightmare is simple. What if the poppies fail? A failed crop begins quietly. The flowers do not bloom as they should, or rain comes too hard, or frost arrives with cruel timing, or goats find the garden gate open and commit agricultural history, or war disrupts trade, or a local lord claims the harvest for his own household, or disease, weather, and bad luck simply join hands, as they so often do in medieval life. At first people deny it. There will be enough. Someone must have stores. The monastery will share. The healer always has some. The market will bring more next week. Then next week comes, and the baskets are empty. The village feels the absence before nightfall. It is not only the lack of a remedy, it is the lack of confidence. The small covered cup is no longer on the shelf. The bundle is gone from the rafters. The healer's jars are light. The sellers at market shrug in a way that suggests either helplessness or price inflation. A village without its usual sleep aid becomes aware of itself. Every baby cries louder. Every cough lasts longer. Every floor creak is a declaration. Every dog seems to bark from moral conviction. Men and women who have slept heavily for months suddenly hear the full orchestra of medieval night. Wind, mice, breathing, animals, rain, whispered arguments, the distant bell, the neighbors snoring, the door latch, the roof, the thoughts. Especially the thoughts. The first night is uncomfortable. The second is comic. The third becomes communal philosophy. People gather in the morning with hollow eyes and strong opinions. Lavender is praised, then dismissed. Hops are tried. Warm ale gains supporters. Boiled lettuce water is mentioned by someone with more hope than evidence. A child suggests everyone simply stay awake forever and is nearly exiled from the breakfast table. The wise woman is besieged. She offers gentler remedies. She encourages patience. She reminds people that natural sleep may return if they stop panicking about it. No one enjoys this advice. Sensible advice rarely feels satisfying to the severely tired. The priest sees opportunity. Perhaps, he says, this shortage is a blessing, a chance to return to discipline, prayer, honest fatigue, and trust in divine rest. The congregation listens with faces that suggest divine rest had better arrive soon. His sermon on wakeful virtue is remembered mostly for the moment he yawned in the middle of his own warning. The manor suffers too, though with more pillows. The lady complains of poor sleep. The lord is irritable. The steward discovers that a sleepless master is much more interested in accounts than a drowsy one, which nobody considers an improvement. Servants whisper that the entire household was calmer when everyone had access to evening comfort. The shortage creates a strange energy. People rediscover stories because stories can carry a person towards sleep when cups cannot. Old tales return. Saints, giants, local ghosts, foolish knights, clever wives, animals who speak, kings in disguise, fields that vanish, wells that grant dreams. A grandmother with a steady voice becomes more valuable than any peddler. A boy who knows 3 songs is asked to sing all of them, then invent a 4th. The household ritual changes. Without the sleepy draft, the family sits longer by the fire. Someone rubs a child's back. Someone hums. Someone warms stones to tuck near feet. Someone tells the same story every night, because repetition is its own medicine. The pace slows not by force of plant chemistry, but by human patience. This is the softest part of the shortage. People remember that sleep has many doors. Not all of them open easily. Not all work every night, but there is comfort in darkness shared gently. A low song, a hand smoothing hair, the smell of wool warming near the fire, the rhythm of breathing, the slow counting of familiar blessings, the small safety of knowing someone else is awake nearby. The shortage also exposes the habits hold. Those who relied most heavily suffer most. They pace, they complain, they bargain. Some travel to nearby villages. Some buy poor substitutes. Some become angry with the healer. The weather, the goats, the saints, the monks, and the general unfairness of existence. A few discover, after difficult nights, that they can sleep without it, though not always well. When the poppy crop returns, as crops eventually do if fortune allows, the village is changed slightly. Not transformed. Medieval villages are not easily transformed by one lesson, but changed enough. The wise woman has more authority. Some households use less. Some save it for pain. Some return immediately to old habits and call everyone else dramatic. The priest preaches gratitude and moderation. The market smiles. The first new batch is greeted not with wild celebration, but with quiet relief. Relief has a sound. It is the exhale after a worry ends. It is the lowering of shoulders. It is the grandmother saying carefully, "We will keep it for when it is needed." It is the man with chronic pain looking at the jar and saying nothing because his eyes have already said enough. The shortage becomes another story in the village's collection. Remember the year poppies failed. Remember when the children stayed awake 3 nights and invented a game with ashes. Remember when the priest told us wakefulness was holy, then fell asleep beside the font? Remember how quiet the first good night was afterward. Stories soften hardship after the fact. They make fear bearable by giving it shape. The poppy shortage becomes not only a crisis, but a memory of how the village learned again to coax sleep from songs, warmth, and patience. The year of shortage also changes how people talk about children. When the usual remedy is gone, parents rediscover the older tools of bedtime: repetition, rocking, humming, carrying a child in circles, until the adult becomes almost as sleepy as the child, telling the same harmless story until everyone can say the next line without thinking. These methods require patience, and patience is easier to praise than to practice when the whole household is tired. A child who cannot sleep becomes not only a child, but a bell rung inside the nerves of every person nearby. The mother hears it, the father hears it, the siblings groan beneath blankets. The grandmother says the child is fighting sleep because children have always been rude to mercy. Someone suggests a song, someone suggests a prayer, someone suggests letting the child tire out naturally, and is ignored by everyone who has worked before dawn. In these scenes, the village becomes more recognizable than distant. Every century has known the long night with a restless child. Every century has had adults who make promises at midnight they would never make in daylight. Every century has searched for safe ways to help the household grow quiet. The shortage reveals that what people truly crave is not any one remedy, but the moment when the room finally settles. And that memory will matter later when the last section of our night arrives, because the true ending of this story is not the cup itself. It is the bedtime ritual that forms around the desire to rest. Before we reach the final dark, there is one more place to visit: the world of songs, jokes, and traveling performers, where even dependence becomes laughter. By the time minstrels and jesters hear of a village habit, it has already become material. Traveling performers live by noticing what everyone recognizes but few can say neatly. They take the complaints of ordinary life and turn them into song. Bad weather, lazy officials, greedy lords, foolish husbands, stubborn wives, overeager priests, strange remedies, failed harvests, embarrassing dreams. Nothing is safe if it can make a tired crowd laugh before supper. Poppy milk is perfect for them. It belongs to everyone. Peasant, priest, monk, lord, mother, healer, seller, child. It has danger, comfort, secrecy, hypocrisy, overuse, strange dreams, and mornings full of regret. It is medicine and punchline in the same cup. On a village green at evening, a small troop arrives with a cart. They bring a battered lute, a drum, a painted cloth, a box of masks, and self-confidence of people who have performed in worse weather. Children gather first, dogs next. Adults pretend they are too busy, then drift closer. The air smells of trampled grass, smoke, and the stew someone should be watching more carefully. The jester begins with the familiar story of a knight who drank a soothing cup before a quest and woke 3 days later to discover his horse had joined another hero. The crowd laughs because they understand lost time. A singer follows with a song about a lord who tried to hold court after too much evening comfort and ruled that all taxes should be paid in pillows. The peasants applaud with suspicious enthusiasm. Then comes the village sketch. A woman plays the wise healer, stern and sensible. A man plays the foolish customer who insists he needs only a little, then returns in every scene more drowsy than before. Someone wears a flower on his head and pretends to be the poppy itself, bowing graciously whenever anyone yawns. The jokes are broad, but beneath them is relief. To laugh at a habit is to loosen its grip a little. To see the Lord mocked for the same weakness as the plowman is to feel, briefly, that the world is fairer than it is. To hear the priest teased gently for condemning what he privately uses for toothache is to acknowledge the shared human body beneath all robes and ranks. The performers know how to keep the tone light. They do not preach too long. They do not scold. They let the audience recognize itself and forgive itself through laughter. Songs travel faster than sermons by the next market day. Children are humming the chorus. By harvest, half the village knows the line about waking up married to a haystack. By winter, the song has changed in 3 neighboring villages, each adding local names and sharper jokes. This is how culture digests trouble. The habit that worried priests and officials becomes something people can sing about while grinding grain. The dangerous remedy becomes part of the comedy of being tired. The heavy mourning becomes a verse. The shortage becomes a refrain. The overstrict law becomes a puppet show in which the inspector falls asleep while arresting a mug. Laughter, like sleep, is a form of release. It does not solve the problem. It does not make the remedy safe. It does not restore lost mornings. But it gives the community a way to breathe around the issue. A person who laughs at himself may be more willing to be careful. Or not. Human improvement is slow, and medieval jokes are not always evidence-based. Still, the evening performance brings peace. After the songs, people linger. Some talk, some yawn, some go home earlier than usual, claiming the show has made them tired in a wholesome way. The performers pack their cart. The jester removes the ridiculous poppy head and becomes merely a man again, rubbing his eyes in the firelight. The village green empties. A song trails down the lane, sung softly by a child who will forget half the words before bed. Smoke lifts from the cottages. A dog barks once, then thinks better of it. The moon rises thin and pale, and now our story begins to fold itself toward the night. Not with scandal, not with panic, not with a kingdom collapsing into sleep, but with the quiet recognition that every culture invents ways to meet the dark. Some ways are wise, some are risky, some are funny, some are tender. Most are a mixture, in medieval England, as imagined through this sleepy tale. Poppy milk becomes a symbol of that mixture, a cup of comfort with a shadow in it, a household habit that reveals how badly people needed rest, and how far they would go to find it. Before that final scene, the performers leave behind one more gift: permission to make the problem smaller. A village that can joke about its own drowsiness can speak about it without only shame. A lord mocked for sleeping through business becomes less terrifying. A priest teased for his own heavy eyelids becomes more human. A healer portrayed as both wise and exasperated becomes more trusted, not less. Laughter does not cure excess, but it drains some secrecy from it. And when secrecy lessens, caution has more room to enter. This is why the songs matter. They are not simply entertainment. They are a village thinking aloud in rhyme, turning private embarrassment into shared memory. They are also a hidden form of retention, if we were thinking like storytellers. The listener remembers the sleepy night, the snoring court, the mock trial of the cup, and through them remembers the central truth. Comfort is powerful. Comfort must be handled gently. The final scene is not in the market, or the manor, or the monastery. It is back inside the cottage, at the hearth, where the day ends and the human need for sleep begins again. Night settles slowly over the village. The fields lose their edges first. The hedges become one dark line. The church tower keeps the last of the sky for a little longer, then gives it up. Smoke rises from the cottages and flattens beneath the cold air. Somewhere, a gate taps against its post until someone curses softly and fixes it. Somewhere else, a child is called indoors, the animals quiet by degrees. Not all at once. as though each species has its own opinion about bedtime. Inside the cottage, the fire is the center of the world. It is not a great fire. It is small, practical, carefully fed. Too much wood wasted tonight means less warmth tomorrow. The flames lean over the coals, lighting the underside of the pot, the rough edges of bowls, the side of a face, the curve of a sleeping dog's back. The family gathers close. This is the hour when remedies, stories, and prayers share the same bench. A child leans against a mother's knee. An old man wraps his blanket tighter. A young woman mends by feel until the light grows too poor. A father stares into the coals, not because he is empty of thought, but because he has too many thoughts to sort aloud. The wind presses at the door, then withdraws. The roof holds on the shelf. There may be a cup, or there may not be. Tonight, perhaps the household uses nothing stronger than warm milk. A little honey, if fortune allows, a lavender bundle, and the slow voice of someone telling an old story. Perhaps the poppy remedy is kept for pain, for crisis, for the nights when ordinary comfort fails. Perhaps it is used with caution. Perhaps it is avoided because the morning's work matters. Perhaps one person longs for it and says nothing. The point now is not the substance. The point is the ritual of settling. The door is barred. The fire is lowered. The bowls are rinsed. The animals shift into sleep. The old story begins. Once, says the grandmother, there was a field where the flowers only bloomed after sunset. Or once there was a knight so sleepy he mistook a hayrick for a castle. Or once there was a saint who listened to every tired person in England and gave each one a dream suited exactly to their troubles. The children listen, or seem to, listening and falling asleep, are close cousins. The adults listen too, though they pretend they are only resting their eyes. The story does what good bedtime stories do. It narrows the world. It takes the mind away from rent, weather, sickness, and the state of the roof. It gives thought a path to follow until thought grows tired of walking. Outside, the village becomes a pattern of dim windows. In one house, a baby finally quiets. In another, a man with pain finds a position that does not hurt. In the manor, a candle burns behind a shutter. In the monastery, the night office is sung by voices that rise and fall like breath. In the herb garden, the poppy heads are only silhouettes. They do not explain themselves, plants rarely do. The moral questions remain. But softly now, was it medicine? Was it temptation? Was it comfort? Was it danger? Yes, perhaps. Depending on the hand, the hour, the need, the amount, the habit, the story told afterward. History is often like that. It does not always give us clean answers. Sometimes it gives us a smoky room, a tired family, a risky remedy, a warning from the church, a joke from a jester, a note in a monk's book, a market whisper, and the unmistakable fact that people were trying to sleep. That fact is enough for tonight. Let the details drift now. The monastery garden can drift. The village cup can drift. The noble chamber can drift. The priest's sermon can drift. The wise woman's herbs can drift. The market baskets can drift. The heavy mourning can drift. The king's proclamation can drift. The failed crop can drift. The jester's song can drift. All of it moves farther away, like a cart on a dark road, wheels soft in the mud, lantern swinging once, then gone. What remains is the small room, the coals, the blanket, the slow breathing of people who have done enough for one day. A medieval night is not silent, but it can become peaceful. The wind still speaks at the wall. The mouse still works in the thatch. The cow still sighs. Someone still turns over in the straw. But the mind no longer needs to chase every sound. It can let the house be a house. The night be a night. The past be past. You do not need the cup from the shelf. You do not need the old remedy. You do not need the monk's jar, the healer's bundle, the noble tray, the market whisper, or the risky promise of a flower. You have the safer magic of distance. You can visit the story and leave the danger behind. You can take the candlelight, the rain on thatch, the low voices, the soft humor, the human longing for rest, and let everything else stay where it belongs. Far back in history, the grandmother's story slows. The child has fallen asleep before the ending. The old man is breathing evenly. The father near the hearth lets his head sink. The mother watches the coals for one more moment, then closes her eyes too. The fire folds inward. The room darkens. The village, with all its work and worry, becomes a field of sleeping roofs beneath the stars. Tomorrow will bring bells, mud, bread, animals, prayers, arguments, labor, gossip, and perhaps another debate about what should or should not be taken before bed. But tomorrow is not here yet. For now, there is only the warm red center of the hearth, only the old beams above, only the hush after a story, only the long human wish, crossing every century, to be free of pain, free of worry, and held for a little while inside the gentle dark. So let the medieval village sleep. Let the poppies stand quietly in the garden. Let the monks close their books. Let the market stalls empty. Let the Lord's hall dim. Let the priest's bell wait until morning. And let yourself rest here, safely in your own time, while the past grows soft and distant, and the night carries every tired soul, then and now, a little closer to sleep.